for the operations division for Niheri, one of Iceland's largest MSPs and hosting providers. He has worked on a large percentage of Iceland's critical infrastructure and leads Niheri's security response team. Arnar was the organizer for the first B-Sides conference in Iceland and is planning for the next InfoSec conference in Iceland. Please give a warm welcome for Arnar Gunnarsson.
Can you hear me fine? Good morning. Thank you. So everybody doing good? It's morning, but I got some people said good morning. That's always good. But who am I? Why am I here? My full name is Arnar Snær Gunnarsson. Yeah, you can skip the middle name. It just means snow. We have lots of words for snow. So I've been doing enterprise level IT for about 15 years now. I've been doing security for roughly 5 years now, working in-house incident response and working with large customers in Iceland. I do some training, security awareness. I work a lot with ISO 27001, PCI, stuff like that, boring stuff. But then, why are we here now? We're going to talk about virtual reality and some privacy issues, security issues that we're having there. Who here has virtual reality gear at home? Show hands. Yeah, a couple of them. Most of us are like that. We just love the idea. All our childhood fantasies are coming true, and we're that kid. But then again, some of us are more like this. So, virtual reality, the phrase was first coined around 1989 by VPL Research, and they came out with that headset. Any idea what's it called? Anyone? It's the iPhone. So, did Apple not make up any words for their phone? iOS is Cisco's operating system. iPhone is that. What did they actually do? But then again, if we look at, from my side, this was my fantasy. Anyone recognize that? That's the virtual reality headset for the Sega Genesis, or Mega Drive. It made all of us real excited when it came out in gamer magazines and stuff like that. This is what we wanted, but we never got. They released an arcade game that used the headset, but consumers really never got it. It was too expensive, it never worked. So virtual reality isn't something new. We've been doing it for a long time. We've been trying and trying and trying, and only these last 4-5 years is where something's happening. But who is trying to use VR these days? We got medical. They are already using applications. Interns can look at diseases beneath the skin. Surgical interns are using it to make operations. And I'm not talking about that horrible game where we're throwing in organs around, stuff like that. Then patient care. Treatment for PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. That's hard for me. It's really work. They've been helping a lot using VR there. Then we have the nuclear programs. They're using training with VR. Hollywood has just started, and like a month and a half ago, they held their first conference with the leading directors like Alejandro Inarritu, J.J. Abrams, and David Goyer leading the way. So we're going to see VR in the close future in Hollywood. The travel industry has been picking it up a lot these days. They're both making booths when you can come and see what's happening. You can visit another place in the world, just sitting in their booth using VR headsets. But the large application here is games. Console games, PC games, mobile games. This is what's driving the development now. And it's fun. But we still need to look at a couple of things. And then we need to ask ourselves the question, what are we? If we think about it. The human being is just a collection of unique patterns that define us. We all behave differently, but if we measure all those patterns, it makes us us. So we've been doing research that show that, well, think about it yourself. Even if you see a silhouetted person, if you know that person, you recognize them by their body language. That's what's happening in VR these days. But then again, we can be fooled. If you're in a virtual reality conference and you're played back yourself with a couple of seconds delay, you won't recognize yourself. It's that timing that's so critical in virtual reality, to able to recognize another person or yourself. And if you really want to read about this, I would recommend that book, Infinite Reality, by Jim Blazkowicz. It's really out there. It's telling us how our new avatars are going to be in digital life. Then again, we always have the bad with the good. It's begun. Sexual harassment in virtual reality is a real thing. It hasn't been for long, but we got it. It's really bad. And this isn't an isolated incident. Game makers are starting to create new features in their games to protect you. So you got a special button or superpower to help you escape from it. But it's a real thing, and it's something we need to look into. We've all heard things like this. It's been talked about a lot. Guy said, I was talking to my friend on the phone the other day about this and this and this, and just the next day I got some advertisement. So people talking, is Facebook or somebody else listening passive to your conversations? This is everywhere. And we'll come back to this later. Just think about this. But then again, what's actually in the hardware we have? People just think about it as a virtual reality goggles, but nothing else. But that's not the case. Every headset has a camera. You can see here on the, that's the Vive, there's a camera here. They all got microphones. That's inside the Oculus. There's a chip here, that's the microphone. And they all also got accelerometers, location awareness, stuff like that. So it's pretty much measuring everything around you. Then you got infrared sensors that are measuring your environment. Think about that. It's measuring your room. When you buy the secondary sensors, both from Oculus and Vive, they recommend a number of 2 or 3. And if you add the third one, it can map your room. So that tells you a lot what's happening there. And that's the thing they don't tell you. That stream is a webcam. It can be accessed as a webcam, and you can see everything. Now, they made it a little... Question? I'll show you. At first, they tried to create filters to block you from seeing it. It looks like this. But because they've been changing, this is how it first started. That's probably from the Oculus Development Kit 1. Then again, we need to change things in this technology to enable us, for example, to do YouTube streaming. And because of that, now we can do this. Think about that. Your headset, sitting in your room, that's open all the time. It's scanning your room. And the guys here that own a virtual reality headset know there are endless amounts of cable, you never unplug it. So that's just always sitting in your room. Then more. We got the wireless controllers, both for the Oculus and the Vive. They wirelessly transmit the data between the controllers and the headset. And between the camera also sends wirelessly. So even though the camera is in the headset, it's transmitting the data wirelessly. Is that exploitable? I don't know. Don't think so. But there might be future applications. Think of it this way. The technology is so young now that we haven't figured out what we're going to do with it yet. So even now, we don't see any way. What about the future? What about when we're doing VR, where the controllers are controlling medical robots? If somebody so interferes with that connection, things can happen. And then again, if you think about the list of hardware features I just counted out, let's think about what can be done with that. What can we do with a piece of technology sitting in your room that has environmental picture, sound, and video, and infrared sensors? VR is making Kinect obsolete. These days, they're starting using virtual reality to sell houses. And they're mapping the house using technology. This is Matterport, and it's a huge company selling houses. They just map it out in virtual reality and show it back to you. But then again, does that picture make you think of anything? Does this sound familiar to someone? Who here remembers this scene? Anyone? Yeah? That's Batman. Using sonar sensors to scan your room. We can pretty much do the same thing with the VR headsets. Think of it that way. But now, anyone here got a random fact for me about Iceland? Someone? Random fact about Iceland. Someone? Come on. Just something. Johnny? That's something. Someone else? That's for you, Johnny. Yeah, I know. It's morning, we know. We try to make it fun. We all wanted more coffee, more sleep. And now we're going to dive a little bit into the more technical side. I'm sorry for these slides, but I have to explain it a little. And I'm awesome at making diagrams like this in Visio. So, this is pretty much how the communication path goes. You got your application, it sends the information to your SDK, that sends it to a buffer on your machine. Remember that buffer, we're going to talk about that a lot. The buffer lets the runtime know where it's at and how it can be read. The buffer outputs it to the driver, it outputs it to the headset. And remember, the headset is just a screen, it's nothing else. At first, when the Oculus started, it was just a really long screen on its side rendered from left to right. It was nothing else. But then again, now, if we tap into the picture before it hits the buffer, well, as it's being entered into the buffer, it's just a stereo image. You got a picture of your screen in stereo. That's it. Looks good. Then the runtime, that arrow should be there. The runtime processes it, it creates lens distortion, time warping to make everything look good. And that's what's being outputted. But that buffer can be read. And that's the thing. Direct text buffer, it lets the runtime know the location of the buffer. And it's just a file. So it can be read by anyone. If you know the location, you can read it. And the direct text buffers aren't encrypted. They're just direct text compressed, and that's a normal industry practice. So now you got the buffer from your whole VR headset lying unencrypted on your computer that can be read. And it's in shared memory in direct text. I'm not a programmer, but if anybody wants it, here's how you do it. That's just direct text programming. That's exactly the buffer. And then again, we need to think about who is protecting us, who is thinking about this information. I liked hearing about when this was being discussed like half a year ago, that Senator Al Franken sent a pretty long letter to Oculus asking them, why are you doing this? What are you doing? And they responded with a 7-part huge letter explaining every point, why they're doing this, and what's being collected. Let's go over a few of those. It's gathering user location information. Basic stuff like general information about time zone, country level. That's not bad, that's fine. It gathers all your physical movement and dimension. They say to deliver a safe, comfortable, and seamless VR experience. Store information about communication between other virtual reality users. First, when you think about it, we think about that's bad. No, not really. That's just like having friends on Steam or something like that. That's just the social part of it. So this is pretty much their response. And always to help improve services. We'll come back to that later. These days, we got some couple of new things there. Has anybody here heard of big screen VR, virtual reality? Yeah. It sounds pretty good. You can control your computer from virtual reality. Get a virtual computer that outputs your headset, and you can look at everything. They're starting to think of work applications for this. You can be in a room with your coworkers and everything. The one thing here is that when you're entering passwords and stuff, all the input from the controllers, it's protected. So that's good. But then again, somebody always has to take it a step further. Here we got envelope VR. Even if the input from the controllers are protected, you can see him write the password, and the buffer is stored unprotected on your computer. So there you have the password while you're logging into the computer, stored unprotected. But what really is being collected? We've seen how Oculus responded, but what's really there? The headset collects 1,000 times a second your orientation, location, acceleration, and more. 1,000 times a second. It's stored into the buffer on your computer. It's only extracted when it's needed. They aggregate it, and they send the whole buffer after being aggregated to them. Okay, then we think, oh, it's fine. The buffer is only being used to help improve my experience. Actually not. The buffer is only storing information to send it to them. It's not helping your experience on your computer. They already have in place prediction models. The prediction models is what's helping you with your experience. So actually, latency in virtual reality can't go to a minus number because they're predicting your movement. They know exactly how fast your head can move, how far you can look to the left and right between a small amount of time. So they already have this in place. So what's that buffer doing? It's just sending all that raw data to them. Yes, sure, it can be used to increase the efficiency of the prediction models, but it's still there. And now think about what we've been telling us. What we are. We're a collection of patterns. This counts into that. The next thing is they store and send eye mapping, heat mapping of what you're looking at. It looks like this. So here, for example, that's Google, and you can see where your eyes first look at. That pretty much defines you. Think of it, they show you a picture, and they know that you always look at that thing first. That pretty much defines you exactly. And then we have things like this. We know where their eyes are going. This has been researched a lot. Same thing here. Yeah, the men look at there, not the women. So they're sending heat maps of what we're looking at and collecting that data. That pretty much defines you exactly. But we talked about earlier that there were some protections in the beginning that have been made defunct now. It used to be really, really hard to tap into the stream. Think of it when the Oculus started to show. They always had a guy with a headset and a screen on the table showing this image. It was the only way to tap into the stream. And that's exactly what's being output into the headset. But then we had YouTubers, streamers that were complaining that their channel didn't look good, so they started changing things up. The current mainstream share overlay is NVIDIA share, that used to be Shadowplay. This was created, and the VR process was changed to allow us to see this instead. This is the buffer before it's being skewed and time warped and stuff like that. This couldn't be done when the technology first came out. You could only get the buffer from here. But now you can tap into the buffer and show you directly. And that's from the direct text compressed buffer. And that's actually Eve Valkyrie. But then, is it exploitable? Well, not really, not the headset itself. Both the USB and HDMI standards are being pretty much maxed out. People are having trouble because of manufacturing specifications aren't up to spec. So some USB 3 controllers can't support the virtual reality headset. The timing is so important there, the headset just doesn't work. So lots of people have been changing out their motherboards, buying external controllers just to be able to use virtual reality. HDMI, same thing there. We're about to explode just by providing 4K virtual reality. But things are gonna help there with DisplayPort 1.4, stuff like that. But this tells us that IP-enabled headsets aren't really coming anytime soon. The bandwidth just isn't there. So we still have that buffer and stuff like that, but it's contained on your machine. It won't be IP-enabled directly. But then again, all the manufacturers have APIs to control everything. They're open and unauthenticated on your machine. The SDK installs endpoints, so you can call the API and do pretty much what you want. So why not just a small Trojan that creates interface with the API and exposes it. Now we can think of things like replay attacks for the headsets, playing something else than you're supposed to see. And that's actually been happening. With the development headsets, now they're being even authenticated as a personal device, so you can start interfacing with the online stores through the headset and buying things. So it's authorized to do stuff like that. And then again, if we look at the future, virtual reality is evolving a lot these days. The next thing, and the thing that's already been looking at, is brainwaves. And yeah, here we're going into something strange. We already have headsets that can read your brain and store and collect basic movements. That thing pretty scary looking. Emotivo is the thing, it's out there, it works. It can read basic commands and operate other things. So robotics, stuff like that. And this is being implemented into VR headsets in the future. And that can be scary. It's so easy, you can buy a kit to read brainwaves using a Raspberry Pi for only about $50. Just go search for it in China. Use Google Translate, it's there. You can put sensors on yourself or another person, and you can control his arms. I've seen it done. Sensor on you, a couple of locations on you and on them, and it can translate when you move your arm to let them move their arm. It's gotten that far already. So we're seeing some things here. Then again, if we think about it, where are we heading? Is this dangerous? It can be. Are we heading into dangerous territory? How will this technology develop as virtual reality goes more miniature? These things are bulky and big now with cables out of them. You got USB 3, you got power, you got everything. It's bulky. It's hard to use it. But it's been getting better all the time. The thing is that virtual reality has been helping us a lot. We've been seeing kids with autism that don't want to go outside. They just put on the VR headset and they enable the camera's pass-through, so they see the world through the camera, and they're, well, I'm not going to say perfectly fine, but they can interact with people for the first time. So the camera can both be put into a pass-through mode and an overlay, like augmented reality. So this is already helping us a lot. The kids with autism, agoraphobes that don't want to go outside, they can go outside with virtual reality. And we're talking just walking out there, not sitting at home, virtual reality, using the pass-through camera, seeing the world through the camera, it helps them. They can go outside. It's also been proved that you can fix eyesight with people that have really bad eyesight, that can't get into surgery, stuff like that. That can be fixed. Well, not fixed. It can be helped. More than 30 million adults in the US experience anxiety. The virtual reality game, Deep, digital version, it's out there. This is doing a lot. Virtual reality game that helps with anxiety. Helps you control your breathing, stuff like that. And this is being used a lot. So, as you can see, the technology is pretty much doing new things. We still don't know where it's going to end. But we can do a lot of things there. But we just need to think about all things and remember what we've always been known. think about privacy, think about what we're doing, and try to protect ourselves. The thing is that they used to publish the core SDK of all the headsets. It was public. You could read it. Now they've closed it all down, so we don't know what's happening in there. So it can be scary. We don't know. So that's all I have for now. Any questions? Anyone? Yeah? Yeah, VR headset. This here. That's from a headset. And then you have, of course, cameras that detect what you're looking at, and that's stuff like this. Cameras detecting what you're looking at, but that's from virtual reality. Yeah? The thing is that even if we think about, for example, here, eValkyrie, if you have a ship incoming, it would be enough to look at it with your eyes to lock onto it. You wouldn't need the controllers. So they're tracking the eyes, stuff like that. Yeah.
I've dealt with a little bit of Oculus technology and things like that. Me personally, hours after, I can still feel kind of that movement and that knowledge. You talk a little bit about unencrypted video channels.
Yeah.
Encryption always adds compute time, always adds.
That's it. Yeah.
Lag. How do you see technology increasing to where we can add secure video feeds and not make me sick?
Well, the thing is, those are two things. We might be able to do it with, for example, DisplayPort 1.4. That increases the bandwidth a lot. But yeah, virtual reality stands and falls with timing. What Oculus did to fix it, they hired a brain something doctor. And what he did was they removed every other frame. That's all they did. They just turned off the screen, every other frame, and that almost completely removed the nausea. When you were playing things like this with Development Kit 1, oh man, I puked one time. I really did. It was bad. It was unusable. So these days, they're getting more and more there. But yeah, like you said, timing is everything.
And so how do you build security, which could inherently increase lag time and affect that timing?
That's one of the problems they're having. Because virtual reality now is taxing our current technology so much that they probably just can't. So that's one of the problems. But the technology, it's almost there. I think the consumer is a year ahead of where we should be as a consumer. We need more development time on this. Johnny?
Just a comment on that topic. Two biggest things that have been pushing technology forward, especially video technology, speech rendering technology, for the past 20 plus years, is pornography and video.
Yeah.
So the fact that we're so close to having that now, maxing out the bandwidth here, I would say that virtual reality is what's going to create the fix.
That's it.
It's going to be its own self-fulfilling
Yeah.
prophecy, just by nature of how to think.
Yeah, it's driving the industry standards ahead. It's showing us, finally, we have something that can use all this bandwidth. Before that, we didn't have any need for something more than this. But now they're asking for more resolution, more everything, and it's just hard. The length of the USB cable for headset is an issue also. Because as you increase it, even though we're only talking a couple feet, the timing can increase, and then it's unusable. You get sick. We don't want that. You're going to have a bad time. Yeah. So yeah, his question was that if interfering with the stream can also be a negative thing, can it be used to negatively impact the person instead of helping them? And of course it can. Think of people with epilepsy and showing them flash images, stuff like that. Luckily, we aren't there. It can be done, stuff like that. And we know, we have seen streams being injected with something else, but we're only talking really basic things. Luckily, it just isn't on the radar yet, but it can definitely be done. Yeah, that's what they're trying to do in the future with brainwave reading. Both reading them and injecting them. So that's what they're trying to do. And then again, think about, we're only talking here about the huge companies, like the Oculus, that's Facebook, the HTC Vive, Sony Morpheus, Sony VR, stuff like this. We're talking multi-million-dollar companies. Look at AliExpress. You can find 300 manufacturers from China. How are they doing things? Are they doing things that badly that it can permanently affect your eyesight, stuff like that, like you were talking about? Just with bad manufacturing habits? I've seen a couple from China. I haven't gone through the headsets a lot there, but the variety is so big. Someone else? Andrew? Yeah. That's pretty much what the avatars are going to do in the future, that they're going to measure you from how you behave and the collection of your patterns to authenticate you as you in virtual reality. So think of games that are just avatar, virtual reality games where you're interacting with other people. They're already starting to experiment with authenticating you as your avatar using those patterns. Because it's you. I think that predictive algorithms is the way to go. Because if you think about it, if we go to companies that are manufacturing limbs, stuff like that, we already know a lot about how we move, what can be done, what can't be done. So those algorithms, predictive movement, I think that's the way to go. We need all the CPU time just to render that for the PC end. So having the PC work to render instead of the headset, the clock time, just CPUs need to be a lot bigger to handle that. And then again, you don't want to have a large headset that can go up to 80 degrees centigrade. That's what, 140 Fahrenheit or something. You don't want a headset with a big CPU that's heating your head. But it's been tried. They tried putting huge CPUs in them and let them process more. And if you think about the HoloLens from Microsoft, it does a lot of computing, more than the virtual reality headsets. Anyone else? Yeah.
I mean, I don't get my head wrapped around the whole thing when you talk about as a developer, value to be positive, negative at the same time, but clearly quantum computing seems like it would be an impact.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. Of course, we're talking a lot theoretical things, but of course, yeah, quantum computing can pretty much help us here. But then again, the problem now is more of the interfaces and just we need superconductors and stuff like that. That's pretty much what we need next. The cables we're using, the materials we're using, has too much skew and latency, stuff like that. Yeah, today that's our bottlenecks. Input, output, cables, interfaces on your computer. That's the bottleneck today. So, thank you.